All right, so let's dive into Bitcoin today. We'll also be taking a look at a handful of other tokens out there, but primarily try to get some price predictions and some potential future analysis here that you guys might enjoy. I think you're going to like it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Joining me today, of course, is Mr. Tom Crown, coming over from Tom Crown Crypto. Great to have you back.
How you doing, Paul? Good to see you.
Yeah, man. So let's get into a couple of points. I want to just jump right into charts today. Obviously, we want to talk a little bit about Michael Saylor's most recent move right here, striking again, acquired another additional 16,000. Wouldn't you like to be able to make that trade, go out and do a 16,000 Bitcoin trade? That's insane.
Just casually.
Casually, you know, $500 billion. Let's go on out there. Anyway, striking again. And interestingly enough, his trade position was actually lower than where the price was at the time that he did it. So he actually made a little bit of a move on that trade. So interesting stuff for sure. When you look at the current chart of Bitcoin, Tom, I know you're obviously a big charter when it comes to Bitcoin. What are you looking at right now that's intriguing to you?
Well, I look at the chart every day for people not familiar with me out there. I do lots of trading content. I'm obsessed with charts, and Bitcoin is obviously my soul blood. I look at it constantly. Too much. Don't be like me. I'm loving what I'm seeing, right? I think that goes without saying. The beginning of this year was very exciting. It boiled down or boiled away, and it got very boring, and people got very bearish. And then what about last month? We started seeing some new highs broken. Continued into this month. This year is really shaping up in a way I think lots of people did not expect.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously we've seen over doubling of Bitcoin on its way to potentially 40K right now. If you look at the likelihood, which is growing even deeper when you look at some of the documents coming in from BlackRock in terms of the ETF, the Bitcoin ETF, and first of all, I guess my question to you, do you think it's priced in where we currently are, which we're hovering around 38 to 40K, or do you think there's a big move setting up for Bitcoin once the ETF approval does happen?
Yeah, people ask me that a lot. Is the price baked in? And I think the easiest answer is to say in 21, we saw $69,000 Bitcoin. Right now it's 37,000. Mm-hmm. We've made some great progress. But I think to say, oh, this giant ETF is priced in underneath an all-time high, I just don't see the logic there. I think it is being priced in by the market right now. And I think that's why we've seen pretty much just upside this year, upside sideways. But no, I don't think that we see it fully priced in until we have a new all-time high, personally.
Yeah. So I've talked to a handful of traders. We've been on calls this week, last week. Everybody's kind of pointing at this 50K target. In terms of a price prediction, if you look at early January, let's kind of run through the Santa rally. Most likely we'll probably see a little bit of movement here toward the end of the year. My question is, what is your price prediction? How is your chart lining up for Bitcoin, say, in the first 2 to 3 months of 2024?
Yeah, I'd love to share a chart here and my thoughts. Let me pull this up. So, Bitcoin chart right here in front of us. If I really like doing this lately. Just looking at 23, it really brings me good energy. I'm a little worried because a lot of people, you're right, are saying 48, 50K. And yeah. I'm not to gloat, but last year, before this year even started, I was looking for 48K. So it's, I guess, comforting, but a little scary that many analysts are looking there. And I really see this playing out maybe one of two ways. We're already sitting at 38.5. This was basically the only monthly resistance we have from back in February of 22. Above us is that 48,000 to 50,000 level. And I do think that we could see that even this year. I don't like to get too FOMO-y on people, but I think it is entirely possible that in December we see a rally up there. But I do have a little caution. So I was looking for 48K at the start of this year, but I unfortunately was looking for something else afterwards. And this is the kind of scary part. Just kind of equating this to the last bull run or bear market into bull run.
Right.
We had that March 2020 sell-off, which was really extreme. And I think that's sitting with a lot of people right now. I think a lot of traders that were here in the last cycle are looking for a repeat. I'm not really on that boat because I think that would take a really catastrophic global black swan event to happen again for Bitcoin to go and potentially trade back to like 15,000. But what we've seen in Bitcoin's previous bull runs is large corrective moves that typically are very fast on the way up. It reminds me a lot of maybe 2016, where we saw 30-40% wicks in maybe 24 hours, price caught back up and continued rallying. So I think we will see some kind of corrective phase. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen right now. I think that we're going to see that 48,000 first. And really, I think that we could see a shakeout. That didn't work. I think we could see a shakeout that brings us down maybe to the low 20s. I would say from a game theory, kind of just mental game of thinking about price action, I asked people what price would make you very excited and think, okay, the bull run is back. I was wrong. I'm going to buy back in, whatever cover. And roughly 50,000 is that number. It's very psychological. You can almost see it in your head, the news lines. Bitcoin above 50,000 again, everything's great. I think that's going to be kind of the pivotal turning point there, where everyone jumps back in. Then we see that corrective move. And where would that be that you would kind of say, oh, I was totally wrong again. I got to get back out. I think that's below 25. It's a really volatile move, and I kind of hope it doesn't happen. But until proven otherwise, I'm looking kind of for about 50K and then back into maybe the lows of September. Whatever the move is, I think it's going to leave people unsatisfied. The people looking to buy a dip aren't going to be able to buy there because they've already kind of made that mental, I'm going in, it's time. They're more likely to sell off on that dip. And I think that's just kind of Bitcoin's nature, shaking the weak hands out.
Well, and the thing that I think starts to play into this is that you've got both Bitcoin, the ETF happening. Obviously, we'll talk about the ETF for Ethereum, but at the same time, you also have maybe rates softening. So there's going to be some macro environment, changes that could shift that a little bit. Obviously, we could also see some reversal on kind of the global conflicts, and whether you think about what's happening in Ukraine or even in Israel. So some of that could play into kind of an upswing into the markets in general, especially toward the halvening. When you look at the halvening and you see what typically we'll see on halvenings, and that is the cycle uptrends that happen after that, is there a period of time, do you feel like that's going to shorten any post-halvening in terms of really seeing the all-time high cycle come in? Or do you think this is going to kind of play out like what we've seen in cycles in the past?
For many years, I have been the guy who said, this is what's happened in the past. So it's the only model we have going forward. And I was very comfortable in that thought until 21. From 21 until today, none of that has really played out the way that it did in the past. Bitcoin had very predictable highs, predictable retracements from the all-time highs, and this cycle didn't really fit in that way. We didn't have a very exaggerated upside, and even 15,000, if that's the bottom, that's only about a 75% retracement. That doesn't really line up with what we've seen in the past. And so I kind of been thinking I need to move away from that 4-year cycle model, because it seems to be the only thing left that kind of predictably always happens. This amount of time passes, the bull run starts. I'm moving away from that because it's been dangerous. It's caught me off guard a lot. I've made some not perfect decisions based on it. So there's no way to know. But I think that if we've ever had a possibility of an early run, I think it could be. I think it could be this one. Yeah.
This is the thing. We look at it because we track sentiment quite a bit within our own sentiment indicators, but we also look at the traditional market moves that you get around these fundamental shifts in technology, which is really what's happening with Bitcoin and crypto in general. Is you're seeing an underlying shift in technology, and most likely that'll happen a lot within the Web3 space. Obviously, Ethereum, which we'll talk about in a second, will kind of lead that way. So I would agree with you. I don't know that necessarily we're going to see the cycles, as much and as impactful as they have been in the past. Sure, there might be some remnants of it, but I'm in agreement with you. Let's jump over to Litecoin. And I know you love Litecoin. Some things happening here recently in terms if you think about Litecoin in general. Obviously, that's also relation to Litecoin, but right there, TVL going up. Some of this, of course, because of the transaction fees that are happening within Bitcoin. And some of the things, actually, I was going to show you guys, I'm sure you've seen this, but the little South Park explanation of where the transactions are coming. You guys, if you have never seen this on our show, This is basically a bunch of the, kind of the whales, those big heads, or the big heads that are, going to the front of the line to get their transaction fee. But you'll notice here the transaction fee right now on Litecoin, very low. And at the same time, we're seeing, look here, look at the line on low fee line. Look at that craziness right now on Bitcoin. So with that being the case, how does this play out for Litecoin, right now, at least as a trade, or possibly in the next, say, 60 days as Bitcoin starts to get a lot more traction and activity?
Yeah, it's great to see people returning to Litecoin. It's been a long time, but it does make sense right now with the environment ordinals kind of clogging up the mempool, transaction times, to get low fees in. You just showed that queue. This is what we used Litecoin for back in the day. Before we had USDT, before we had things, we used it. Oh, I want Bitcoin. I'll buy Litecoin. I'll send it somewhere else and I'll buy Bitcoin. So it's good to see that return. Unfortunately, it's not super reflected on the chart at the moment. Happy to pull this up. Litecoin definitely still struggling here. I do think in the macro view, this is a very strong chart. It's one giant flag, right? From all the way back in 17, but it just hasn't moved anywhere yet. And if we really zoom into price, I'm basically looking at these levels. We had $76 from back in March, June, strong support here. We hit a higher high and then we fell back. And right here actually was the halvening. So this was not a very bullish event for its price. And we can see it's struggling a little bit under 76. What I think is going on, though, is that we potentially have a very strong entry for a spot position or a long position. Of course, not financial advice, guys. I'm a little biased on Litecoin, but I think that Litecoin has more upside to it. I don't know if it's going to be exactly related to the transaction and people using it. I'm not an expert on TVL, but I could easily see Litecoin returning up to, let's say, near that $100 mark over the next few months. Okay. I wish it was more bullish, and it will be someday. It will be someday.
Well, I mean, if you look at the spike in this transactions right here on just Litecoin transact, the historical, this right here was the big one, and this occurred just here recently. Again, you go back, and of course this is ordinals, and you can kind of, anytime there's problems with transactions when it comes to Bitcoin, Litecoin seems to be the one that benefits from that. So interesting.
I love that. I've never seen that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go over to Ethereum for a minute. And when you look at Ethereum, obviously this is a big part of it. People are now saying, listen, ETFs are going to happen for ETH. We had James Seyfert on our show here recently, and his claim is he's thinking April, May. So that's pretty fast if you think about an ETH ETF coming after a Bitcoin ETF, which may take some time to actually get through it, even though it might get approved. Actually having it to where people could invest in it, which I would think would still be the requirement for moving the charts. But as far as ETH is concerned, do you think that it is going to have a similar traction in terms of new investors coming in based on the ETF being available? And will it move the charts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, bring them in. I think the Ethereum ETF is the next logical step, right? We have Bitcoin, and then we move to number two. One thing I am always about through, 2018, we started talking about ETFs is don't jump ahead of yourself. Definitely keep it on the horizon, but these things take time. We don't even have the Bitcoin ETF yet. We're all but there, but we still don't have it. And we don't have a definite time of when that will be. But that being said, Ethereum is looking good as well. Really, all of the markets are looking great. It's finally exciting to look at charts again. I can pull up Ethereum here.
Things are moving. Yeah, for sure.
Ethereum's look very, very strong.
I know that you've got a wedge there coming in, but do you like ETH coming in at, say, if you were to price predict in alignment with what Bitcoin does, let's say going to 50K, whether it is the ETF or other indicators, where would you see ETH at that point?
Absolutely, right up here. Right up here in this 2,700, maybe 3,200. And that is like the equivalent to Bitcoin's 48, 50K right here. Okay. This little lower high before we fell. I'm loving the last few months here. We have a flat top building. It's about $2,100. And we've had a series of higher lows. We had our lowest low in July, higher low in November. We finally kicked it off again in October, retesting that 2,100 level. Each time a resistance is tested, it becomes weaker. some of the sellers that were there got their sells filled, and they're not there anymore to sell again. So even if we don't break out right here on Ethereum, as long as we keep this pattern of higher lows and we keep testing 2100, we're going to 2700. I don't have a great timeline on that. I can't say April or May or what the other guy said, but it's looking very, very likely. And maybe by the end of Q1, provided everything doesn't crash randomly in the start of the year.
Interesting. So if you look at a 27, I'm just trying to get to my chart on that and look at what that would range if you're trading this current position. Let's say that runs, still a 32% move right now. Boy, that would be a massive move for Ethereum as an overall. In terms of looking at the two, premium assets, both Bitcoin and Ethereum, is there one that, I know you're a big Bitcoin trader, but would you say, hey, I might be a little bit more active with ETH because of this opportunity here? How would you play it out?
There's definitely going to be a pocket or a window where Ethereum is going to return better. Like whenever it makes that move, that climb from above 21 to 27, I think that'd be very quick when it does happen. And in that time, it will absolutely have stronger gains than Bitcoin. Bitcoin will likely be trading sideways. Maybe we hit that 48 and don't do anything for a little bit, and then Ethereum jumps up. But at the moment, it is a little hands off for me. It's not a toxic thing, but we are again at 2100-ish, or 3% below it right now. We've had many chances to enter. We've had many chances to enter lower over the year. So for right now, it's not like I think jumping in is the excellent, perfect move for the moment. I think there might be a little discount, like I said earlier, some kind of higher low. I think we could see as low as 1800 maybe. These are never guaranteed, but we could see even as low as 1650 and still be in this pattern. So I think the right move is always a DCA approach, right? If you're not trading leverage or being a degen, slow entry, accumulating the assets you believe in. And if that's Ethereum, now is, the best time other than yesterday. That's what they say.
Yeah, a couple of points on this, on the article. The proposal starts a 45-day clock for the SEC to approve or deny. I'm just kind of curious how that'll align, because do we get pent up if we get an ETF with the Bitcoin applications that are in now, and especially if they do a multi-approval, I think everybody would look to Ethereum as being, okay, well, that's going to happen, obviously, with ETH. All of that playing into it really could get interesting for sure. All right, so let's jump over to the other hot token I want to talk about, and that is Solana. Solana's been moving like crazy, over this past 30 to 45 days. Quite possibly one of the biggest players out there right now. Obviously, after Breakpoint, we saw massive moves. When you look at Solana right now, you've got ARK Invest saying Solana's doing a really good job. ETH is fast and cheaper. Bitcoin's back in the day, but now we've got Solana even coming in at, in terms of transactions, and of course, all the tech that's playing around that. Take all of what we know about Solana. If you guys haven't watched many of our Solana videos, go back and check us out. People think we're shills for Solana. We are not, but we like to watch Solana. And, hey, listen, it's paid off for us so far. What do you think going into the near term Solana looks like, say, towards the end of the year? Let's say, Santa rally or no Santa rally for Solana?
Yeah, Solana really took everybody by storm this year. That move from $20, maybe $17, all the way to 67, 68. That was pretty intense, and I will admit I was a little skeptical on the climb up. It was also one of the earlier runners, so it was kind of diverging from the market, putting on these gains, and I was like, guys, this is dangerous. We're up like 100% or more, and you're all wanting to jump in. This is not how we typically trade in my community. We're kind of the other way around. When things are lower, we like to jump in. But at the moment, I really do think that we see, whether it's this year or not, I think that we see Solana make its way at least to $75. We're talking about Bitcoin's 48,000, Ethereum's 2,700. This is pretty much the same thing up here on Solana. And that's a pretty big range, but it's anywhere from $75 to maybe $120. To at least test that 75 makes total sense to me. I don't know what will happen or when it will happen, but it is looking good. As long as it's holding above that $50 mark, this was our previous kind of resistance area. Upwards is the way to go, right? That's the direction we're looking.
Yeah, I mean that 75. I was looking at your chart. You've got that level right there that happened. What was that back in March of 22, which was when we saw that 75, $78 range. There's a little bit of upside here on this token right now. Again, the question will be is with all the advancements that Solana has had, will that cause a lot more people, because I always look at it this way. You get adoption coming in these bull runs. The first thing they buy is Bitcoin. The second thing they're looking for is, all right, what's the other token, And in the past, it's kind of been Ethereum. My question is, do people start to, and even Cardano, at one point, Cardano was in that discussion. But now, does Solana become the new kind of chosen child in this next run, and we get to see it just absolutely go crazy and no longer be, as many of our viewers will call, the VC coin? So what are your thoughts about whether or not Solana makes that kind of run?
It has been, right? I know you've seen it on your channel and your community, definitely on mine. New people coming in and wanting to see Solana, like specifically. So I think we already see that beginning here. I've had people actually text me, people who are crypto people in my life, but not like us, just kind of casual, and say, "Oh, I saw Solana. Should I get Solana?" And actually, that wasn't at the top of its price. So I think that's a good sign. I'm seeing it myself. People are at least finding it. And I think kind of the complete retailer, uncrypto people, that's what they're hearing about. They're hearing about it in the news. They're hearing about people talk about it. And I don't think they even really know the difference. I don't think they know about Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. They just are hearing Solana and think, oh, that's crypto, hear the brand. Right?
Yeah, they just hear, it's the brand of crypto of the day. If you look at the active addresses right now, past 24, this is about 163K with 39.4 million transactions and right now 11.5 million active accounts. So I know a lot of people have kind of migrated to things like Phantom, which is Solana's wallet. A lot of swaps happening there, which I think is boosting up these transactions. We're also seeing a lot of ecosystem play within Solana itself. So all that I think is kind of coming back in. And don't forget, you've got Shrapnel coming in, obviously, as well, which is leading toward what's going to happen, I think, in the Avalanche ecosystem, which is kind of the counterbalance to Solana. And that's the other question. So some people would say, well, I'll hedge ETH with Solana. But what would you hedge Solana with? Would it be an Avalanche? How would you play that if you're kind of trying to look at diversity within a portfolio?
Yeah, Bitcoin, Litecoin. Yeah, I said it before just a few minutes ago that whatever you believe in, I'm like a Bitcoin. I'm not a maximalist, but I'm close. But that's just, I believe in Bitcoin. I believe in its future. I believe that it has a place in society as we go forward. And whatever you feel that about, I think is the right choice for you. Belief is a huge part of this whole ecosystem that people don't really talk about as much anymore. It's kind of more about moons and Lambos.
I don't know. I think that, to me, listen, I've been in investing in businesses all my life, investing in stocks and precious metals all my life. And to me, it's still the same kind of, at least to me, it feels like it's no different. Sure, you have the Moon Boys and the Lambo kids out there playing in it, but I think that's just, indicative of the generation. It's not really a different mindset, or at least to me, it's not a mindset. Everybody is expecting gains in these, and they'll go after whichever, because it doesn't matter if it's a stock, if it's a certain kind of precious metal, or a security of whatever type, and or a business, which to me is the riskiest of all. And you want to talk about degens, get into VC or angel investing. That's where the degens live. But anyway, you got John Woo coming in here. We did a video on this also, and he's talking about private equity investing as historical. And this goes back to my private equity story here. Investing has been historically inaccessible. This all is going to change now with this thing called Republic Note. If you guys don't know anything about that, go check our video out. I think we put it out yesterday. And it's a really good example of what's happening over on the Avalanche ecosystem. So check it out, because it gets into, and there's a couple of tokens to watch there. INX is one, and a handful of others that are starting to play into this. So looking at the Avalanche chart, Tom, give me a 90-day on that one. Give me your chart guru on Avalanche.
All right. I didn't have a clean one to give you, so I just pulled this one up. Avalanche has done great. Actually, shout out to All Star Arena or whatever it is, if that still even exists. I know they had
Stars
problems,
Arena,
but I ended up buying some. Yeah, I ended up buying some AVAX at $10 just for that app. Then I didn't really use it too much. So shout out to them for doing something. But Avalanche is looking good as well. You know, we see this across the spaces. These alts have kind of moved from a bottom price back to a major resistance or back to a major price point. And right now that's $23. We hit it this month. We've seen price pull back a little bit. But what I'm looking for, I'd say in the next few months, is a test of $30 on AVAX. Potentially there could be an entry there at like $17. We may see a pullback, I'd say about as far as that. But $30 is really where I'm aiming from. That was a very important price point, kind of looking to the left over here. Beginning of AVAX, found resistance, went up to the all-time high. But what gets exciting is we were talking again about that 27,000, that 120 or 75 to 120 SOL and 50K Bitcoin is. Some of these charts have their lower highs really high up. And when we look at AVAX, we have a setup for potentially really big upside. We have a lot of inefficiency in our price, meaning just down. No up and down, no trapping buyers and sellers, pretty much just down. And when that happens in markets, and we've seen this on coins like Rune recently, when they get back to kind of those voids and those inefficiencies, they tend to blast through them. So if AVAX can reach $30, maybe close a weekly or daily candle above there, I think you could see $64, $65 very quickly, like within a week of kind of securing that level.
Yeah, well, if you look at the chart on AVAX, I mean, this had a 68%. This was a 68% drop just between August, right here, of 22 to where we are right now, setting in October. So about a year and a half, it's been pretty much, as you said, just always down for AVAX. So this interesting move that we've seen here, some of this is accumulation of tech that they've been building kind of in the bear market, which I think is a lot of these projects. They just keep building, doing partnerships, and then that's what kind of gets the sentiment brewing within these. Going over to another token, I want to jump over to a tweet here from Sandeep over at Polygon. So he's doing an announcement. Polygon Connect are going to bring kind of an inflection point on what's happening right now around their blockchains in India, but they've got a couple of demos happening on their ZK product. And then supposedly there's going to be a big announcement. So in terms of institutional adoption and what Polygon might play into it. Some people are anticipating maybe we're going to try to do some things like what Avalanche has done with subnets. What are your thoughts on Polygon right now from a chart action position? Because this has not been a big performer as though it has been in the past. It's been a monster performer and not here recently. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that is true. It hasn't quite made those gains yet that we've seen in a lot of charts. I wouldn't count it out. I think that it's shown a lot of strength actually over maybe this month, retaking some critical levels. So I'll pull up this chart too. I'm liking this chart. So the issue with a lot of them is they're at resistance. Those are not really places that at least I look to add or pick up a new position. And maybe MATIC is one of those that isn't. MATIC is a little bit more in between. The major level that I was looking at over my streams for MATIC was 68 cents. It really had to retake 68 cents. It spent a good amount of time there, kind of warming up, moved to $1, a very nice psychological level, and started pulling back. I think that you may still see 68 cents again, and that could be a good price point to look to make a position. But I think kind of the overall thoughts here for most of these are the ones that haven't run yet. If they are real projects and they're developing and they're improving, well, I think it's logical they're all going to slowly make those moves. Solana may have gone first. MATIC, may not come yet, but it's looking like the whole space is moving.
Timing wise,
so
too,
I think it would be,
you got that announcement. So I would agree.
It's kind of like there's more upside room in a lot of these that haven't run yet. One of the reasons I love Litecoin, maybe it has the most upside room because it hasn't done any. I love making fun of Litecoin. I do love it. But at the $1.20 is looking good. This chart is a little different though. A lot of the ones we looked at had that high and then a lower high. MATIC doesn't really have that. We could say the lower high is over here in March at $1.20, but it just has a different structure. Since it's retaken 68 cents, man, I really got to make those white. Since it's retaken 68 cents, $1.20 is sitting above us as monthly. You can see that same inefficiency Not a lot of up and down, just kind of down. And once it gets past there, you have a good clearance to the upside. That monthly close up here looks very attractive from December 21, January 22 at about 250. You're very likely going to run into at least a pause. And it depends how that rally goes at about $1.61. But there's considerably more upside back to the all-time high versus some other coins we've looked at. So I think MATIC is looking great. I would be looking for 68 cents though. I think it will come, whether it's sooner or later. I think that you'll have an entry there and be able to get a pretty decent position.
All right, so last up today, in agreement with that on MATIC, I think it is kind of been a laggard for sure, but Uniswap partnership now bringing institutional access to DeFi. A couple of points here in this article. They partner with Talos. This is an institutional investing tech firm. So they're trying to bring, much more liquidity into DeFi, which could play very well here. Some institutional investors, though, are looking for exposure to certain protocols and projects that obviously can only be done on DEXs and, like Uniswap. So, and I mean, we do that from time to time. So your thoughts on Uniswap, because it has had an unbelievable tear here in the last few weeks. Do you see this as a long-term play with a token like Uniswap?
I'm not the most familiar with Uniswap. I definitely remember it being kind of coming out and listening. It was an airdrop, right? That seems like so long ago now. I'm not really sure the long term. If people are still using it, I never really have used swaps myself, at least not enough to claim any kind of expertise. But really just looking at the charts of everything, and everything is just having this kind of rhyming feeling, I don't think Uniswap is any exception. This is the chart I pulled up. I didn't have a fresh one for you either. This one's a little busier, but kind of the same thing. This month moved up to a monthly level. We had a double top here, I'd say in January, August of last year. It's about 650. And then you're looking at $8. You just get a close above 650. And if not, this is actually, looking at this, Evan, in a bit, has a kind of, I like this. Oh no, lots on here. I could see it revisiting $5. It's at $5.90 right now. $5 is a great psychological level. We tend to see people kind of swoop in at these levels, 5, 1, 10. I think that actually could be a decent play. I'll have to look at this more. I will admit I didn't look at it much recently. I haven't had many people request it.
Interesting. All right. Well, I like that. I like the $5 position too, because that is one that would be a case. Well, last question for you, Tom. We don't get an ETF. Bitcoin falls on its face, or Bitcoin just stands and says, no big deal. Let's just keep going. Your thoughts?
What will happen? We kind of have lived that scenario. A lot of people don't realize. We talked about ETFs in like 2018. So, for all effect, it has fallen on its face for years, right? I think the market's kind of beaten out of the ETF happening, not happening. I think that kind of the price movements it's going to make based on a rejection have already happened over the years. I think we're pretty numb to it. Yeah. However, I think the probability of that happening is very low, if not zero. It's all but here
now. Yeah, it's a big difference on the players. I mean, you've got BlackRock and all of Wall Street in there, as opposed to 18. It was basically the Winklevoss twins. That was the ETF idea. So. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Hopefully January 10th will give us a resolve on all of this ETF news that could put us into a pretty interesting spot right here. Hey, Tom, it's always fun having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's great to be here.
Yeah. All right. Good luck out there. All right. So listen, guys, if you're listening in over on the podcast, you got to jump over here to the YouTube channel, because we just did a whole slew of charts with Tom Crown. If you have not visited Tom Crown's YouTube channel, make sure and check it out. Also follow him over on Twitter, which is just Tom Crown Crypto. You guys can catch him there. And we'll leave a link usually down below for our guests that have YouTube channels. But make sure and subscribe to his channel out there. Give the guy some love. But make sure and jump in here, because this is where you're going to get additional content. All you have to do, of course, is join our Diamond Circle. We do a couple of podcasts over there that do not make it here on YouTube. So it's another great place to get additional content from me and also Kyle Wilson. We do our Web3 gaming podcast over there. And catch me out there on X. It's @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.